Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So, our guest today is a dentist by trade, but we are not having him on the channel to talk about crowns and root canals. He's a very interesting guy. He has questioned um, many things about life and the universe, and he has written a very interesting book. We find it very interesting. We think you'll find it very interesting. And he's going to share his thoughts and his logic behind his conclusions. And I think it's going to be something you've probably not considered or thought about the way we're going to talk about it. And I think it's going to be a great conversation. So, without his name is Steve Pasin. And without further ado, let's bring Steve onto the channel now. So, Steve, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here.
All right. So, let's just jump right in. You and I had a great conversation not long ago, and you introduced me to all of the concepts that you've developed over decades. And I know you're a dentist by trade, but you wrote a super interesting book called Taming the Fetal Tyrant and its Ancestral Delusional Love Stories. So that really doesn't do anything to explain to people what the book's actually about. At least a layperson would not pick up on that, what the book's actually about. So why don't you start it there? Walk people through what you wrote your book about. And let me just preface that by saying Steve has been thinking about this for literally decades. He's a retired dentist. He's in his 70s, right? Late 70s, early 80s?
77.
Yeah, late 70s. So this is literally decades in the making, and I found our conversation super interesting. Really excited to share it with you guys today. And I'll quit talking, Steve. So tell us about your book.
um, well, the title is really, if you look at the words, we all started out as a fetus, and we have no idea of the personality that was developed, that was needed to be developed evolutionarily for us to be able to survive after or post womb. And people don't put this together. It's all a continuum. So we are, in order to get what we want, we have to be tyrants. We have to demand what we want of the people. We don't even know they're going to be people, but when we were born, we're going to have needs. We're going to need to be held. We're going to need to be kept warm. We're going to need to be cooled off. We're going to need to, thirsty and food and all that kind of stuff. And we have to demand it. Well, how do we communicate that unless we're a tyrant? And we have no command of language. So that's how the fetal part and the tyrant came together. And then I combined that with how far back does it go? Ancestral refers to in the vicinity of 40,000 years ago when we, were in caves, and we developed a certain way of believing out of that environment, and so that's the ancestral part of our delusional, which means the cave people that we were made up anything that they had to make up in order to, make heads or tails of the environment they were living in. They had to deal with thunder, lightning, animals coming to eat them, interpersonal relationships of the cave, all the stuff we still live with today. And then the love stories is that we fell in love with all the suppositions that we came up with. Well, this means that. The main thing is pairing. We, as a species with the neocortex, we pair stuff, meaning if this happens, then it means that. See the pairing?
Yep.
If then is a pairing. And we do this subconsciously. We don't even know we're doing it. Like you were saying, if I were to tell you now, you told me just prior to the start of the show, was you were fascinated by how a thought creates a chemical.
Yes.
Now, did you notice how you have already, when you first realized that, when you were studying it on your own a few days ago, what you paired that with? In other words, you had that new information. What came along with it as a realization? That realization is a pairing.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Now I'm tracking. Yep.
So that's the kind of stuff we fall in love with, the pairing. Now, as cave dwellers, the pairing that we did was a thunderclap is now paired with somebody crying, or an animal looking to track you down, or an eclipse is paired with some sort of social happening of the cave. You see the pairing that we're talking about?
For sure.
So we make association. We make associations. Um, Even if I can get a little, I guess, crass here. Remember when Jesus was on the cross, and it was supposed to have been lightning and thunder at the time?
I've heard the story. Yes.
That's a pairing, isn't it?
Sure. Makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. The lightning and thunder happening at that particular time has no other meaning when it ever happens again, or before. It depends on your point of history. Before Jesus was on the cross, lightning and thunder didn't mean what it meant after he was on the cross. You know what I mean? So it was paired differently, and every culture does this, and we go to war over it, because when you go to Mount, there's a mountain, I forgot the name of it, but where the Oracle of Delphi, resided.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. These are, so she told you certain things, and you were going through certain things in life, like if you were Alexander, should I fight the Persians? You know what I mean? So you go to the Oracle, and the Oracle gives you some sort of answer, and you pair it with what you want to happen in your mind, and you decide to go to war or not. And we do that. You do this with your wife. We do this with our friends. If X happens, it means Y. So that's the pairing of X and Y.
Well, so I have a good example of that, Steve. So, like, if I say something that my wife doesn't like, I sleep on the couch. That's a pairing that happens pretty frequently at my house.
Well, then you realize the importance of saying the right thing.
That's exactly right. Okay, I'm done kidding around. This is a great subject,
but it has to pair. It has to pair with what she sees in her mind, right?
Yeah, and seriously, the first time, like, I understand exactly what you're talking about. It's fascinated me since it was introduced to me. It was introduced to me in a philosophy class when I was in college, and it was called the rooster crow fallacy. So the rooster crows in the morning, the sun comes up, ergo, the rooster crowing must make the sun come up, right? So correlation does not equal causation. That's resonated with me ever since I heard it 35, 40 years ago, whenever it was. So anyhow, continue, please.
And if you believe in it, that's your love story. And that's part of the title.
Right.
So Taming the Fetal Tyrant and its Ancestral Delusional love stories. Now, the delusional part is that if you look up the definition of delusion, it is anything that you can't prove that you believe in causes you to be delusional. So what story is the truth that you can actually prove as a cave person? Nothing. Because it's all paired with something else. And then we dragged the delusions for 40,000 years, Joe. 40,000 years. Picture it. And here we are today. People are woke because they're delusional. Because they have the same mentality as from whence they came. Ergo, cave. And like the experience you had, which you didn't even realize that a thought creates a biochemistry in your body. People have no idea that they're delusional.
Yeah, like
they believe what they believe.
The thought has to create a biochemical. It just has to, because you take a different action after the thought, and that somehow, and I love your theory on it. We'll get to it as we work through this, but it just has to. Like, there's no other. It has to change from an esoteric thought into some physical manifestation. It just does.
Otherwise, you don't get feelings.
Or take action, right? Your thought is, hey, pick up that drink.
Yeah, isn't the action a feeling?
Yes.
So the thing is that the biochemical changes the biochemistry, the biology of your body, and now things are floating in your blood that weren't there before, and you have feelings as a result of that. Love is part of that. Hate is part of that. Resentment is part of that. Disillusionment. All of these are mixes of chemicals that cause us to feel, a certain way. In other words, if you have adrenaline flowing and you're into fight flight, that's not going to be the same as contemplating should you. There's a different chemical for that. And I started to see that they combine. So the mind creates a cocktail of different chemicals which give you slight of the feelings that you have. Well, I don't quite feel that angry. You see that kind of a slice?
I'm not angry enough to punch that guy, right?
Yes, and so there's a combination of chemicals that make that. So you see, let's say if you added a little bit of dopamine to your adrenaline, you wouldn't have pure fight flight for the adrenaline. It would be tamped down because of the dopamine. And then you have serotonin and you have oxytocin. And I believe there are chemicals in your body we don't even know are being produced because we haven't technologically found them yet. But I believe they're there.
Well, and you're a dentist. You're a dentist by trade. You were a dentist for a long time, right?
Yeah, 50 years.
Yep. So my point there is, Steve's not some shaman that came down off a mountain and is talking about this stuff. He's a pretty practical guy. And I think that's super important.
Bro. Don't do that to people. I am a shaman that came down from the mountain. I've tried to develop that persona for decades. What's the matter with you?
I'm sorry. I apologize for ruining your gig. My apologies, Steve.
I'll be controlling my chemistry.
But like this predates when we talked, you said you've been thinking about these things since you were a kid. What drove that? Why do you start thinking about this stuff? What have you been trying to answer for all these decades?
Well, the first thing that occurs, and this is not just me, Joe. Everything that I have come to believe has come to believe because I've asked other people if they've had the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just me, like you said, coming down from the mountain, saying, "Hey, look what I found." Because everything that I have found is already in you, and I've just asked patients. I actually asked them in the chair because I didn't have all the answers as a young dentist. And what the hell did dentistry have to do with that kind of stuff? It was just my interest, and I had no real solidification with how people thought and felt about certain things. So I asked. And so I found that at 10 years old, when my parents had people over the house as guests and they would talk and they'd have conversations and I would be eavesdropping. And I started to notice that everybody in the conversation thought that they were right.
Yeah, true.
and what does a 10-year-old do with that? Well, I never thought to ask my parents what that meant. I just came to my own conclusion that they couldn't all be right.
Yeah, right.
Subsequent to that, many decades later, in asking other people, so I would ask them, have you ever had an experience when you were very young that caused you to believe certain things were right and certain things were wrong? Everyone does. It's not really possible for you to go through. You may not remember them, but you can't go through as a child all the experiences that it takes to form who you are so you can survive the environment that you're in without having thoughts and feelings develop.
Yeah, sure.
So that's no longer a theory. That's a fact. You see what I mean? So that's what happened to me at 10 years old. And I started to realize that everyone else on the planet has that kind of an experience as a kid. And from there, well, then there were other things that occurred. Something happened even at 5 years old that I didn't even realize how important it was until 70 years later. And that was when my father punched me in my arm. And he promised never to do it again. And he did. And I remember saying at 5 years old, because it was a traumatic experience for a 5-year-old, to be punched by your hero and then to be lied to that he would never do it again. And he did it again 3 weeks later. It's amazing what you remember. When
it lasted 3 weeks, huh?
You remember this kind of stuff. That was the 3 weeks wasn't significant. It was that I remembered it was around 3 weeks.
Sure.
You see, so that's a milestone for a 5-year-old.
True.
Everybody goes through this. Everybody has a little different question. I ask people to get onto this path was, do you remember going through something that you didn't want to have to go through? You didn't like it. It was stressful for you. And as a result of that experience, you decided to be or not to be a certain way. There's a very powerful fundamental question. Everyone does. That forms who you are as a result of chemical formation in your body. As a case in point, my father was a type A personality, prone to heart disease as a result of that, angry and hostile. And I could have easily have said when he punched me in the arm, wow, what a way to get your way. Look how much power you have if you get angry and hit someone. Some people can't get over that, and they model that. That person becomes a role model to them, and they become bullies.
Sure.
See, this is not magic. This is life experience. But on the other hand, I looked at it and said, I don't want to be like you. And as a result of saying, I don't want to be like you, my father, I practiced for my entire life not to be like him. And so you know what happened to me, I believe? I became a type B personality. But you see how the pairing goes? Well, if you like your father, you must have the gene for anger and hostility.
Sure.
But if you're not like your father, who knows what happened? You don't believe you have the choice to make your personality occur. Because I read a long time ago that 90% of your personality is formed by age 6, which means you have very little control over it unless you make these decisions to be or not to be a certain way prior to 6 years old. And I believe that's what happens. Little teeny tiny shifts in your chemistry, and that solidifies your chemistry. What happens is that you're going to, unbeknownst, relatively new research, you're going to create chemicals that will alter your gene function. So when I decided not to be like my father, that decision created chemicals. Those chemicals attached to my DNA. There are processes that we know of now, just one or two of them. One is called methylation, a methyl group. You can think a methyl group into existence from a stress hormone. It attaches to your DNA. As a result of attaching to your DNA, the DNA deforms because this is all electromagnetic. And in the deformation of the gene, you no longer get the gene producing the chemical that it was designed to produce. Now you'll be deficient.
On this, I'm tracking. I'm following what you're saying. I just want a point of clarification here. Are you saying that the research shows and or the hypothesis is that by the time you're 6, call it, I think you said 6, that your body has fallen into rhythms and patterns that are either difficult or impossible to break after the age of 6 as it relates to your personality? Is that the right way to think about it?
That's what the psychology research had shown, and I read this a long time ago.
Yeah.
But now, are we plastic enough to change that?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. And the reason I'm asking is I can remember, I don't know, I was 8 or 9 years old. And my parents, so my parents wound up getting a divorce right after my wife and I got married. So I was an adult. when my parents got divorced, but they should have got a divorce 10 years before that because they did not like being around each other. And they would argue with each other a lot. And so we'd get sent to our rooms and I'd have to go sit on my bed. And I can remember as a kid sitting on my bed at 8 or 9, somewhere in that age bracket, saying, I'm not going to live like this when I grow up. I'm going to be married to someone that I really like being around, and I'm going to be in a good marriage. And, I've been with my wife for 33 years, and, you've got, you've got years on me. So, not everything's all hunky dory, but we've had a pretty good run for 33 years. There's been a lot more good times than bad times, and it's been a really good experience for both of us. And I'm wondering if that is the same as what we're talking about, or I'm wondering if there's something else to that because it happened after the age of 6. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, the word that I used before was plasticity.
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting that you can take this methyl group, adulterates your gene, that let's say it produces too much cortisol. Now you're under a lot of stress.
Yep.
So a life event occurs, many life events occur, and you respond by making all those life events that are stressful to you wrong. So one of the premises that I make in my book is I have a new definition of what stress is. Stress is anything that you think is wrong. The thought of wrong produces cortisol. Cortisol is a good thing if it's if it's in short-term supply. However, you can alter the gene with your cortisol. There's another gene which suppresses the production of cortisol. You can turn that gene off. That means you can no longer suppress your cortisol. Now you're on a runaway cortisol train. And much of the time when you get that, you get metabolic syndrome because now it screws up your sugar metabolism. You put fat on around the abdomen, and that's your typical look for metabolic syndrome. Well, if it were hardwired and you couldn't do anything about it, you could never lose the weight and start controlling your cortisol. And
regardless of calorie deficits, you're saying without being able to properly control cortisol and or insulin, regardless of calorie deficits, your body's not going to convert glucose or sucrose the way it's supposed to, and you're going to maintain that weight.
Yep, you got stand in the machinery when you start stressing out.
Got it. Yep.
And if you don't know what it's all about, then you'll start to pair it with some celestial body, looking to do you harm. Which is unfortunate because you never had to wait that long to get the benefit of using your mind and understanding how you got that way in the first place to switch it back off. And so you switch it back off, guess what happens? A miracle. You lose the weight. You're no longer a diabetic.
Praise Jesus, right?
Whatever it is that you praise, that's what you praise. And you don't know. And that to me is a drag from the cave. Once you understand it, you can become no longer, like the way I'm putting this, you no longer have to be a cave person, cave mentality. Because we have an accumulated knowledge that is so prodigious. Why not use it?
Yep.
Instead of continuing to think out of the cave.
So that's a good point. That's a good pivot point to chapter 1 of your book, Truth. What is truth? Yeah. How to ascertain if you have it. You can also filter all subsequent book concepts through what truth is within this book. Let's talk through that while we're here.
Absolutely. Take it from the 10-year-old who was trying to figure out who was telling the truth with the arguments with my parents' friends. How does the 10-year-old work that? Well, over the course of time, you start to realize, and I've taken up, that's why it's the first chapter in my book, by the way. What is truth? Truth turns out to be a singularity. When you have truth, there's only one of it. It's not subject to the famous quote that says, well, Joe, that might be true for you, but it's not true for me.
Mm.
That is not true. That's an opinion. But because of the human nature, which hopefully will come, further on in the show, the human nature tries to twist an opinion into a truth so that the person who is voicing the opinion can be more highly validated.
And you avoid stress, right?
Well, and that helps too. You see? Now, that is a rationalization. A rationalization is part of the ego defense mechanism. And so I came up with this interesting idea that epigenetics, the modification of a gene, actually, is usually a bad thing. When you're starting off with a healthy gene and you adulterate it, that usually does not turn into a healthier gene. It gets worse.
Sure, makes sense.
So, yeah. So what happens is that the ego defense mechanism wants to keep everything in homeostasis, wants to keep everything on an even keel. So it's going to justify everything that it possibly can of the behaviors, which would be your chemistry. It's going to justify your behaviors for righteousness. You're going to be right with what your opinion is. You see that juxtaposition of opinion and truth?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
If you use the expression that might be true for you, but it's not true for me, you no longer have a singularity. You have a duality.
You said it a little bit differently when we talked last time. What you said was, if it's true for every single person on the earth. That is a truth, right?
That's my next statement. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because when you just look at the word and you study it, the truth has to be true for every single person on the planet. And it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter who taught you whatever they taught you. If it's not true for everyone on the planet, you have a problem. It's an opinion. Yep. And then I took a look at the word opinion. I looked it up. Well, anybody could do this. I don't know why it was me, but if you look up the word opinion, do you find that it has anything to do with a bias?
I'm sure it does. I haven't looked up opinion, but I'd be shocked if it doesn't.
Then I'll just go ahead and say it. An opinion is a bias, is a prejudice, and is a faith. Because you don't need proof of any opinion or bias or prejudice or faith for it to be true for you. You just pair it. True for me. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's why I call it the bumping into the walls of life and not understanding why we get hurt when we bump.
Yeah.
We're just making stuff up and we don't even pair it with what truth is. And we so glibly say, well, it's not true for me. Might be true for you, but it's not true for me, as if that's a possibility. It can't be both. E equals MC squared has to be true for anybody on the planet.
Yep.
Or you don't get how suns create energy for your life to live. You don't get satellites. You don't get atomic energy. If you can disbelieve E equals MC squared because it's not true for me. Too bad. Let's go to war in the Middle East over what's true for you versus what's true for someone else.
Right.
How unfortunate that we have come to that.
Well, and not only have we come to that, we've never left it, right? It's been going on for 40,000 years.
It's the cave. It's the cave. It's so easy to see once you can see it. Otherwise, then we'll just start saying, well, it's the human nature. Do you know what people don't know what the human nature is? The human nature has to come out of the fetal tyrancy. There's got to be a continuum between the two. So the human nature is to win, control, dominate, and be right. Can you see how winning, controlling, dominating, and being right, which is the human nature, is tethered to megalomania?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, there's the tether. That's the connection. That's the continuum. That's what brings us to the world we live in.
Do you think
Cultures try to control the megalomania so they can produce beings of the culture that can benefit the culture, so we can get along together, as opposed to being everyone is a megalomaniac? Can you imagine if everyone was a megalomaniac?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you was why do you think some people, whatever, choose crazy leader here, whether it was Adolf Hitler, or Joseph Stalin, or uh, Winston Churchill, or Donald Trump, whatever, right? You've got, I would think all of them have some megalomania in them for sure, based on the actions that they took and the approach they took to the world. What do you think the difference is between them and someone who's also trying to be right, but isn't willing to go to the same extent that those people are to actually be right and take control?
There's no critical thinking. If you could critically think the philosophical points of view of each of the people you mentioned, and then you say, well, I like this, I don't like that, I think I'll follow this guy, I don't think I'll follow that guy, but it all has to be sifted through the human nature to win, control, dominate, and be right. Will I win, control, dominate, and be right if I follow this point of view? And you just make a choice, just like you make a choice to be or not to be like your father.
Hmm.
It's not magic. So I went ahead and I said, so just to put a real fine point on it,
Yeah.
Is there if the human nature is to win, control, dominate, and be right? Because if you flip that and ask, well, if it's not to win, control, dominate, and be right, is it to lose, be dominated, be controlled, and be wrong? Well, nobody comes from the second point of view, right?
Right.
Everybody comes from wanting to win. So how do you reconcile now that one and only human nature, which, by the way, if you really look at, is also the nature, not necessarily the human nature, but it's the nature of all life. All life wants to win, control, dominate, and be right. And that makes perfect Darwinian sense. If we are actually in the continuum of all life, and all life that came before us had to survive, and to do that, they had to win, control, dominate, and be right over some other animal that it's fed on, it makes all the sense in the world that is our human nature, to win, control, dominate, and be right. So how do you reconcile what I call in the book, I tease them, Terry and Addie? Terry is Mother Teresa. Addie is Adolf Hitler.
Hmm.
Do they have the same human nature?
Yes.
You think people believe that?
I believe it. Like, they're humans. Like, by definition,
Yeah.
they have to, right?
Well, that's only when you have been exposed to what I'm talking about. But if you go up to somebody, more or less, and try to make a point, and you say, well, how many human natures are there? 8 billion? 1 million?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100% there. Like, it's without question, people would not view those two people and say, yes, they are at their core the same person, or have the same nature, but they do.
That's right.
Yes.
So I bring it out in the book. It says, Hitler had different experiences in World War I, and they were not the same experiences that Mother Teresa had as she was deciding who to win, control, dominate, and be right with. Adolf Hitler decided to go with politics to win, control, dominate, and be right, and look what happened to the world. Mother Teresa decided to go with God, because you couldn't get higher winning, controlling, dominating, and being right than God. It's just a choice. It's a pairing. Which one is the truth? None of them.
I was going to say neither. Yeah.
You just make it up because it satisfies, your desire to win, control, dominate, and be right. It's nothing more complicated than that. And once you realize it, the aha button goes on. Now you experience an epiphany. Wow. Everything is now falling perfectly into place. One human nature, We all want to win, control, dominate, be right. We're willing to kill anything that stands in our way. Now, the killing is not necessarily, for the sake of food. It could also be the killing of a relationship. How many people have sacrificed relationships due to the politics of Donald Trump?
Yep.
Well, if you believe in Donald Trump, I can't be your friend any longer.
Right.
That's a killing. That's a righteousness. Win, control, dominate, and be righteousness. And that's who we are. And it all translates into biochemistry. If we get sick, if we get righteous enough, if we get so twisted in wanting to win, control, dominate, and be right, I've actually done interviews with patients who I found that Parkinson's disease and ALS were all parts of belief processes that triggered biochemical changes. Then bingo, they became sick, diseased. You see how the word breaks down? Disease. They're no longer at ease. They produce the chemicals for stress. It snaps on and off certain genes, and now you get a disease, a stress-related disease, specifically a stress-related disease. You can even get a bacterial stress-related disease because you can suppress your immune system mentally. Happens all the time. Here's something perfect. It happened to my nephew just recently. He became sick, and so I wanted to know what happened approximately 3 days prior to the onset of his illness. And he was under a lot of stress because he was doing a lot of studying for his college entrance tests. So he got sick. He changed the chemistry of his body because of stress. He suppressed his immune system. My own son, many decades ago, developed, what's the name of that disease? Maybe you'll remember it, but he was under a lot of stress because he was away from home at school. And he suppressed his immune system and got that. I can't remember it. It's a kissing disease. Remember that one?
Mononucleosis.
That's it. I knew you'd remember it. And that's what he developed, mono, as a result of being stressed out in a new environment that he didn't have so much winning, controlling, dominating, and righteousness over. It was controlling him. Didn't even realize he went through it. He was going through that. And bingo, stress-related disease. And if you don't know, you don't know when you make stuff up to be right about what you don't know.
Right? That I know. That's the truth.
That's what's happening. That's what's happening to the entire life of on the planet, except other animals don't. By the way, I wanted to share this with you because since our last conversation, I'm always thinking about stuff.
Yep.
Like this to come together. But so this is hot off the press. No one knows this. So we were discussing longevity and what causes longevity. And human beings have a certain lifespan, but other animals have a greater lifespan than ours. So I looked at it and I said, you know what? We have a neocortex and these other animals do not. There's a dividing line. So what does the neocortex provide us that it does not provide other animals that causes longevity in them and a shorter lifespan in us? Our neocortex gives us the ability to go to the stars. No other animal has a neocortex, they don't go to the stars. We have a neocortex, and we fight over trivia that doesn't even exist. It kills our relationships. That neocortex, by having it to go to the stars, it kills relationships. Now, think of it even in terms of your own marriage. When you get into an argument, it's killing the relationship. And then you do what you want to do to try and patch it up, to change the chemistry. These other animals that have longer lifespans get along better together. They produce more cortisol. Prairie voles mate for life, and they have long lifespans compared to human beings.
Yeah.
So our neocortex kills us off because we don't get along. We don't get along because we're righteous about nonsensical things.
True. Yes.
You see the pairing?
Sure. Absolutely.
Nobody seems to have been able to figure that out. But the only thing that sits on the table is something that is on the table to deal with. This is stuff not being made up. This is stuff that is being seen in the literature. Lifespans, chemistries, anatomical differences in the way of a neocortex, all of this stuff has to play a role in the answer. And that's what I believe the answer is. It's all biochemistry. It's epigenetics. It stems from Darwinian evolution, from the very first life form that had to survive by being controlled, dominating, and being right over some other animal that had to eat. And here we are, trying to figure it out 1,000,000 years later.
But like on the longevity thing, so whatever, let's take dogs. Dogs live about 15 years and humans live, let's say 80 years on average.
Yeah.
Then humans are 80 years and Galapagos tortoises are 200 years, right? So
that's right. That's right. I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because a dog, when you look at the two animals, a dog and a Galapagos tortoise, look at the speed of life that they both live.
Yep.
The dog is much more energetic.
Yep.
A dog will fight more.
True.
And
at least I think it's true. I've never seen two Galapagos tortoises fighting, so I think that's true.
Well, think of it in terms of biochemistry. If they live so long, the tortoises, one could conclude, so we need some more evidence, for that, but I would bet that they produce more cortisol than a dog does. Because a dog, we never say there's such a thing as a junkyard tortoise, but there is a junkyard dog.
That is true.
And that should turn the light bulb on as far as longevity is concerned. Now, the dog, you could turn around and say, well, a dog lives longer because it has a relationship with a human being. That means with a human being, it produces more cortisol, and the human being loves the dog, so it produces more cortisol. But, if you don't feed the dog, there's no cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
So you're buying the dog's love, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's okay. And don't we as human beings buy the love of other people?
Oh, for sure.
This might be too personal for you, but I'll ask it of the general audience. Would you ever fall in love with somebody if you didn't get what you want from them? Whatever that want would be. Doesn't matter what it is.
I would say no.
So if you don't get what you want, you break up, right?
For sure.
And the breaking up process, or the dating process, is a process to find out if you can get what you want.
Yep, I agree with that.
And if you don't, you break up.
Yep.
Now, does that say anything about what love is?
I'm thinking so I'm thinking through that, not like not good or bad. I've never really understood or been able to define love. Just to be candid. So I'm not sure how to define it.
All right. And then along comes Jones. Here I am.
So yeah,
So
fire away. Tell me.
it occurred to me that you will never produce enough cortisol, which I believe to be in a gradient. It builds as you have a relationship building, because you don't fall in love with somebody the first moment you meet them. You
Very
might
rare.
fall in love. You might fall in love,
True.
right?
Yep.
Because you don't know anything. You don't know what to trade for, and love is a trade. If you give me what I want of you, will you give me? If I will, I will give you what you want of me, but only if I can get what I want of you. That's
Yeah,
an
I think that's 100% correct. And like I was just gonna say, maybe that's why my wife and I have such a good relationship is we're both and have been for 30 plus years. We're both very aware of what you just said. Like if this doesn't work for me, I'll take off. And she's the same way. But we've always gotten what we want out of the relationship from each other. So it's always worked really well for us. But we've been very, very cognizant of it. Like it is absolutely, call it quid pro quo, call it whatever you want. But that's the truth for both of us. What you just said, 100%.
but nobody sits down at the very beginning of a relationship and discusses that. Let's make a trade, honey. You give me what I want, I'll give you what you want. Let's trade. Nobody talks that way.
Yeah, true.
So if love then is based on getting what you want, because you'll never fall in love with somebody unless you get what you want,
Yep.
enough of getting what you want, then therefore love must be based on being selfish.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's not
To
that's not surprising or a revelation to me for what it's worth.
many people, though, it is.
Mm.
They don't see love being selfish. But now the next question is being selfish related in any way to the human nature of wanting to win, control, dominate, and be right?
Sorry, ask that one more time, Steve.
Sure. If love, I'll call it cortisol love. Cortisol love is based on getting what you want, because you will never produce enough cortisol to fall in love unless you get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're willing to trade, you're willing to compromise, but unless you get what you want, you get frustrated and the relationship starts to suffer. Now, does that presuppose that you must get what you want? Is getting what you want selfish?
I got to look up the definition of selfish to be able to answer
Oh,
that.
please, Joe. You're old enough to know what selfish is. Getting what you want is selfish.
Well, no, because it's lacking. So here's the thing: lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure.
Sounds like getting what you want to me.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I wanted to look it up. Yes.
Okay. When that happened in my mind, I started to see now there's a relationship between love and selfishness.
Sure. Yes.
And nobody put that together. And then I put the icing on the cake there and said, love is selfish, and selfishness has everything to do with winning, controlling, dominating, and being right.
So I'm laughing because my wife and I have had, and this is actually her theory, and I 100% agree. She has said there's no such thing as a selfless act. Like it doesn't exist. Because if you're whatever, being charitable, if you're volunteering, if you're doing all of those things, you're doing them because of how they make you feel. They're doing them because of what you get out of them. So it's actually selfish. It's not selfless. It's selfish, 100%. So I'm laughing because we've had that conversation at our table for 20 plus years.
And I rest my case.
Right?
So what I wanted to do was piece together the institutions
Yeah.
that man has created. And I wanted to see whether or not those institutions were representative of the human nature to win, control, dominate, and be right.
Sure.
So it was pretty easy to see the institution of politics had to do with win, control, dominate, and being right. The institution of the military, uh, legal systems, medical systems, educational systems, everything that we put together, legal, police systems, all about winning, controlling, dominating, and being right. They were institutions. So those were easy to see. The institution of marriage was the difficult one, which is the one I just explained to you about how it's related to cortisol and getting what you want.
Sure.
Because in order to be right, I had to come up with every single example, even the most difficult one. And the most difficult one seemed to be at the time that love, the marriage institution based on love, was really based on a selfish getting what you want, which had everything to do with winning, controlling, dominating, and being right, the human nature.
Yeah, it's so totally agree. I agree with everything you just said. My question is, or something for us to discuss is how do you deal with people or make hey, stop. Sorry, my dog's growling here. How do you
It's a kind of love.
how do you make it make sense for people that say, I only want these things in a relationship, but they're unhappy not in a relationship? See what I don't know if I'm asking that question very well, but
Yeah, it's being ambushed at the pass, so to speak.
yeah, I think that's the right way to think about it. Yep.
Um, it all filters through the human nature. What in each point of view that they have, a winning point of view and a point of view that prevents them from winning. Even being prevented from winning is a win in a subconscious way. And that subconscious way is more powerful than the conscious way. And as a result of being more powerful, it sabotages what seems to be the conscious want. Because you're getting in other words, there's a payoff for not getting what you want, which is greater than the payoff for getting what you want.
I got
That's
it.
why
Yep.
that's why it fails. And that's why out of that kind of stuff, that's why you need to go see a psychotherapist. They gotta start, unteasing this ball of knots that you created out of a righteousness, and you never knew you did it. And by the way, how far do you think it goes back? It goes back to when that person was a child, making decisions to be or not to be a certain way based on a life event.
Why do you think some people aren't able to discern clearly what they want? That's never been a problem for me, and it's always been curious to me why it's hard for other people.
Well, being confused about what you want is a payoff.
How so?
It's the payoff by not getting what you want, which is your deep-seated subconscious saying, I don't want that. And I don't want it to a much higher level than what I think I want.
Got it. Okay, now I'm
But
tracking. It's kind of the same conversation we just had. Yep.
It's subconscious. And now, now remember, all of these thoughts are biochemically induced.
Yes.
Now you have the biochemistry running around your body, which is causing epigenetic differences in your body. Now it gets to a point where you can't take it anymore, so you got to seek some sort of medical treatment. And they start putting you on drugs to counteract the drugs you're making mentally. So if you have a hard time keeping serotonin in your body because it's being taken, they call it a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So that's the drug they give you, for, let's say, depression type of stuff. So what you need is the serotonin to hang around in the synapses and not be retaken up by the synapses to be reused again. Because when it's taken back up, you now have a loss of serotonin, and now you get depressed. So they give you a drug for your depression. We'll discuss that in a second, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and it inhibits the reuptake of the serotonin, which keeps the serotonin doing its job in the first place. But how did you get depressed, Joe? There was a point in time where you were not depressed.
Right.
An event occurred, you made a decision, you paired it with something, like I did when I was a kid, like you did. So we paired it, and now we get, if you're depressed, you're bound to have a stress, right? Something is not going the way you want it to go. Something is being made wrong. Stress is anything that you think is wrong. You're producing cortisol for that stress.
Yeah.
The cortisol. And not only that, adrenaline has to be involved. Because now you're being faced with something in life that is a depressor, only because you have judged it to be so. Your righteous indignation. I'm right, you're wrong. And I tell you what I'm going to do, Joe. I'm going to prove to you how right I am by suppressing my serotonin. And I'm going to produce adrenaline to prove to you how wronged you have made me. So we very much use our bodies to prove our righteousness, which is one of the pillars of winning, controlling, dominating, and being righteous.
Sure.
It all fits. So you make these chemicals, they affect the epigenetics of the genes, and now you need other drugs. And you know something that's fascinating? In lieu of the medical drugs that a doctor can give you, you could have psychotherapy to undo the imbalance, if you will, of the drugs that should not even be made. So if you're making stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, you can go to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, and they'll talk you through your problems without drugs. Excuse the expression, Joe. How the hell does that happen? Without drugs or with drugs? You get the same result.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. How does that work?
Because you're rebalancing the psychotherapy is just reorienting your outlook on life, which caused the problem in the first place.
So it's basically changing your pairings.
Changing your what?
Pairings.
Okay. Yes. I knew I liked you.
You see what I'm saying though? Like that's essentially what you're doing in therapy, right? So exactly. I'm depressed because X, whatever X is. And your psychotherapist helps you see that no, forget about X, or X is different, or whatever. They help you. You pair that emotion with a different outcome or result or whatever you want to call it. And that helps you rebalance your chemicals, most notably cortisol, right?
Yeah. And adrenaline. Remember, adrenaline is fight, flight.
Yeah.
And you get real depressed when you can't fight and you can't run.
Yeah.
And now you feel trapped in a box. That's depression, my friend.
Sure.
So, but that's how it works. And while you were talking, I was thinking what you were actually saying is the cognitive behavioral therapy is just repairing what you errantly paired.
Yep.
No drugs are needed. You got that way in the first place, and you blamed on everything else but yourself because of your righteousness.
Totally. Yes, I'm with you.
You got the Middle East wars, and you got the Far Eastern wars, Formosa and China, and you got the European wars with Putin and what's the other one? What's the name of that country?
Ukraine.
Ukraine, you know, and they make this stuff up. You deserve to be invaded. Why? Let's make up a story. And you know what floors me? It floors me that the politics is all about making up a story to justify your behavior.
100%. Yes.
And I have to die for that? Me as a civilian has to die for your leadership inequities? That was one of the big things. I don't know how old you are. Did you go through Vietnam?
I did not. My dad did. I'm 53. My dad's 78. He served a tour in Vietnam.
All right. So he and I are the same age.
Yeah.
Um, I was scared to death to go to Vietnam.
You should have been.
Should have been. But now when you look back, now my father told me, because he was in World War II, he said, all these guys dying in Vietnam are just cannon fodder. Well, what the hell did I know about cannon fodder? I just didn't know I want to die.
Right.
You know? But he knew it was all nonsense.
Yep.
If you had stopped Hitler's ranting and raving and his belief in and you'll love this one, he had a spiritual belief that he was in charge of the master race.
Yep.
Is that right? How nice of him to have that feeling that 50 million people had to die for because he had to win, control, dominate, and be right out of his human nature.
Yep.
Sorry. There's no need for us to be dying this way. How much energy is lost being righteous on fields of glory that don't exist?
Yeah.
When all that human talent could be used to conquer the universe. Why bother seeing it that way? And by the way, to see it that way, you have to have a change of chemistry. You have to give up the crap that you believe. That's if you want to advance as a species. If not, you'll be on another rung on the ladder of extinction.
100% correct. And people love to pretend humans aren't animals, but humans are just animals. We just are. We're just a different species of animal.
I'm glad you brought that. Did we ever discuss the last time what the purpose of life was?
We did. Yes, no, we did. We did, absolutely.
The purpose of life is to be the sustenance for other life.
Yep.
Top of that is just a mythical story. Because when you get bitten by a mosquito, your body is providing sustenance to that animal. And when you die and your flesh and bones are gone, they only get to be gone because other life forms have fed on it. That's all you are. Just like when the dinosaur killed another dinosaur for food, just like a bird, kills a worm, feeds it to its kids, who will then do the same thing. That's the purpose of life. And we never saw it, Joe. We never saw that when a dinosaur killed another dinosaur or a fish ate another fish, we never saw that as the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to be eaten. I'm sorry. Go to church and talk to your priest about it.
Right.
And he'll say I'm nuts. But in the end, the priest is going to be food for other life forms that feed on the priest. We just had a new pope put in, and so the pope from the United States, the bishop, the cardinal rather, from the United States is now the pope. What happened to the pope who died? Did he go through anything different because he was next in line to God? Or did he die and go through the same physical maladies that all other human beings go through?
Well,
How come we can't? How come we can't see that?
yeah, that's one of the things that I've made that argument about religion when people say, well, there's proof, there's got to be a God, and I'm like, okay, so
Prove
if
it.
the
Well, prove it.
Pope,
Go ahead.
say it again.
You said the key word. They said that there's got to be proof that there's a God. So I say, prove it.
Yeah, exactly.
Prove that your rendition of God is the true rendition of God for every single person on the planet, which is the definition of truth.
And it's so interesting that each version of religion is very similar to the other versions of religion, isn't it?
I wonder why. Because all the religions came from a human being that had the same human nature as every other human being to win, control, dominate, be right. The only thing that changed was the story that each clan made up in their own cave. And when they emerged from the cave, they fought wars over what they decided was the truth in the cave. And we continue doing it now. Except our cave is called the USSR, it's called China, it's called the United States, it's called your home, whatever it is. Let's kill over it. Because we're stupid. And if you look up the word stupid, it means ignorant.
Yeah.
That's who we are. And unless you start to understand this as a being that lives on this planet, the premier being that lives on this planet, because we have the greatest mental capacity of all life. That's provable. No other life, has scuba gear. you don't get fish developing scuba gear to swim on land.
Right. I don't see parrots driving cars or
That's right. So,
horses launching rockets or whatever.
So make up any story you want. Oh, one of the things that's really interesting is that the people who believe they walk around with their palms to the sky, and it's just amazing to me that and they think that that's proof of God because all they're doing is having a thought, and that thought is putting chemistry into their body. And what do you think this chemistry is being put into their body for the belief in God? Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin.
Yeah.
You don't get the feeling in your body when you produce cortisol or adrenaline. So is that what God is about? The production of your ability to produce cortisol? Please. There was something else that I brought up in the book that had to do with the size of brains that the precursors of man, the Australopithecines, had a certain amount of cubic centimeters, in their skulls that housed the brain, and they did not have any death rituals. The first one to show a death ritual, burying their dead with trinkets and things like that, was the Neanderthal. And the Neanderthal had like 450 cubic centimeters of extra gray matter in its skull. Now, is that what is needed for there to be a God? 450 cubic centimeters of extra gray matter? Evidently. But why see it from that point of view? Everybody else is right and I'm wrong. That's why I had to write the book. There was too much. My cup runneth over.
What do people and we're not done talking about the book, but I'm just curious. We got a lot more stuff to cover, but what do people say about your book after they read it? What have you had readers reach out to you and talk to you after they've read it? What do they say?
This has been I hate to say it. My own brother didn't read it. He skimmed through it. He decided that he the preconceived ideas he was not willing to get rid of all of them. So, and then he turned around and said, my book is very deep. And I suppose it is. That's just the way I see things. But I'm learning that people don't read books. They would rather listen to this show and get what they get from the show than to read a book where it's all condensed.
For sure. There's no question. Steve, did you like geometry when you did math? Did you like geometry?
Which led me to, I did well in geometry and algebra, trigonometry, things like that. But when I got to calculus, I couldn't figure it out. And I just this past weekend asked AI if it would put into terms of calculus what stress and what stress is was one other thing. And it did it. And it was so complicated still. I have to go back and ask AI, what do these terms mean? So that will be, once I understand it myself, I will certainly maybe put it in a book, the next book, stuff like that. But calculus was the difficult part. It's a language all its own, and it's very, from what I gather of it, very, very logical. In other words, if you have this and that, and there are terms for this and that you add or subtract or multiply. But the moment you start getting into those terms, it becomes like, what the hell language is that?
Well, I mean, so I always looked at calculus like, calculus is for figuring out really complex mathematical solutions. Like, what's the area of a parabola, right? Or what's the volume of a conic parabola, whatever. I asked you about geometry because I feel like what you have done in your book is very similar to proving a theorem in geometry. So you start here and you work towards a solution, but you have to have a truth that leads you to another truth, that leads you to another truth, that leads you to another truth, that leads you to the ultimate answer, if you want to call it that, right? That's the way I think about your book when we talk about it.
I agree. That seems the way I did it, even though I didn't know that I did it.
Yeah, no, I just was curious. Like, it seems very similar to how geometry works for me. And I love the geometry. The reason I asked about I love having this guy. I love talking and learning about this stuff. And people can think what they want, and people can, we always just try to expose people to a lot of different things and say, aren't you better off for having the knowledge, even if you completely disagree with it? And to your point, I've always been, just me personally, I've always been a prove it kind of guy. I've always been a contrarian. Like, I'll believe stuff that you can prove to me, but until then, I don't take a lot of shit on faith. I just don't. And if you can't prove it, then I'm not willing to cede that it's true. For the sake of conversation, for the sake of argument, fine, let's assume your point is true, but I'm not saying that it is true. I'm saying for this exercise, let's just say it's true. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. Now I have to deal with what proof is. Because if your concept of proof is, let's just say for sake of argument, in other words, if it's not in some religious text of the 100,000 religions there are,
right,
then it can't be the truth.
That's exactly right. And that's been my argument all along, is what you just said. Like, that's your opinion. That is, you're appealing to a higher authority, which you can't prove exists. So I don't recognize your high authority.
It's not a singular truth.
Yeah, that's right.
It's 100,000 of them, but it's not a singular.
Right. Like, water is a singular truth. There are 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen atoms in each molecule of water. Period. That's the truth. All the time, no matter what, everywhere.
And how did we find that out? This is very pertinent, what you just brought up. How did we find H2O is two hydrogens and one oxygen? How did we find out that there was approximately a 102-degree angle between the hydrogen and the oxygens? How did we find out that it forms a crystal lattice at a certain temperature we call ice? How does water then not interact with itself on a molecular basis and can be split apart into steam? You see what I mean?
I think what you're getting at is you test it over and over again and try to prove that it's not true, and you can't, right?
There's a method to proving. And that is, I know you know this.
Yeah, the scientific method.
It's the science. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think any of the 100,000 religions on this planet use the scientific method to prove the veracity of their book?
This is what drove, just sidebar, this is what drove me nuts during the COVID pandemic is if I heard one more idiot say trust the science that didn't have any fucking idea what the scientific method was. The whole point of science is to question unless it can be proven. That's the entire point of science.
That's it.
So if you can't prove to me that staying 6 feet apart from everybody is the solution to stop the spread of COVID, then I don't want to fucking hear it anymore. Like, it's not true. You have no proof. There's no evidence.
But they said so.
Exactly. Exactly. Dr. Fauci told me.
That's right. And of course, he had no ulterior motive as a being that must win, control, dominate, and be right.
Right. It's just
we would never put him in that box. Are you kidding me? He's way too highfalutin for that.
It's wild. That's what I love about your book. And this is a big endeavor to take on. Like, this is a big chunk to bite off and try to digest. And I appreciate that you did it. And I appreciate the approach that you took. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, people can agree with it, not agree with it. I love the approach. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I really appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate talking to you about it.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to read about it. You don't have to put that in the show. But that's the frustrating part about this is that I had to find a way to market this to the people of the planet.
Yeah.
And evidently, I've started to kind of rewrite it in what they call a punchy way. Have you ever heard of a punchy way of writing?
It's essentially like a Reader's Digest version of.
Yeah, it's a little lighter.
Yeah,
it's not as heavy as I make it.
Yeah,
because I've learned after 77 years, I'm a pretty heavy person.
For what it's worth, I appreciate it, but yeah, and look, from an entertainment, look, it depends on why you're reading. A lot of people read to be entertained. They don't read to become educated. And I'm not judging anybody. I just read to become educated. That's what I like to read.
You're full of it. You're judging everybody, and we all do.
Not on this particular thing.
That's what it is to be human. To win, control, dominate, and be right presupposes you must judge.
Yeah, a different way to say it is there's some stuff I don't care about, and so you can do whatever you want because I don't care. On the stuff I do care about, I absolutely want to win, control, dominate, and be right. No question about it. None.
Notice the difference in your chemistries from your different points of view.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure, totally.
And that's what health and disease is all about. Your point of view. And if your point of view is based in scientific truth, you will have a totally different biochemistry for health than if it's based on anything else. Anything else. So if you really want to be healthy, stay on the straight and narrow. By the way, if you're talking truth, you are on the straight and narrow. Straight and narrow, that's an interesting philosophical concept. The straight and narrow is the scientific results. The straight and narrow is a singularity. The straight and narrow does not allow you to deviate from the straight and narrow path of truth because there's only one truth. However, if you are one of the believers of any one of the 100,000 religions, you can make up anything as the truth you want. And you know what that's called? Anarchy.
Snake oil. It's called snake oil.
I like the word anarchy better because I would rather be in someone's face and call them an anarchist, even though they don't understand the definition of the word. Because that's exactly what they are. You tell me what religion is not an anarchist to any other religion. Work on that.
No, I'm with you. And I've never been like I don't believe in God. I never have. And I like it seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't I don't see why that's controversial, but it is.
But that's the whole point of being on the straight and narrow. You only get one truth on the straight and narrow.
Mm.
There's no room to be bypassed by any other truth. Because the straight and narrow doesn't accommodate it.
Right.
You might add to the truth in areas that have not been seen yet. Like there may very well be something that gets to be added to E equals MC squared that we don't know of yet. But that will not eliminate the truth of E equals MC squared. It will just add to the truth of it. It will open up a vista that had not been seen. But you will not see that. You will not see that in any of the 100,000 religions because guess what, Joe? They already got it figured out. There's nothing to be added. And
I'm laughing because I'm laughing because that's one of the things that anytime someone tells me to accept something on faith, I am immediately skeptical. Like it doesn't resonate with me at all. And it doesn't matter what the subject is.
But do you know why? Because you inherently know that a faith is a prejudice, is a bias, is an opinion. That's just worked backwards from opinion, bias, prejudice, and faith. So whenever you hear that word faith, you know it's an opinion.
Yes,
and
that's right.
In mentally, you take out your hand, pat the person on the shoulder, and say, "Thanks for sharing."
Well, and so let me ask you this, Steve: is it wrong for people to have opinions? Do you think they should not have opinions? What's your take on that?
There was a time somebody asked me that question about a current event, and they asked me my opinion of it. And I said, I don't have one because number one, it wouldn't matter if I had one. Number two, the chance of my opinion being the truth, because I don't have all of the facts to the current event, makes my point of view meaningless. And they got really upset.
Really?
they couldn't see that somebody couldn't have an opinion. You could live if you have an understanding of what your foundation is. My foundation, since I became a doctor, since I started learning of the science, the truth in doctoring, was I had to rely on what other researchers have found as evidence for the belief of what kind of drug I should use in a certain circumstance.
Yeah.
I couldn't have an opinion of what drug I should use on a certain illness in a certain circumstance. Yeah. See, and no one goes to a doctor thinking, "Hey, doc, give me your fascist anarchy, as to what you think is causing my illness." Oh, doc, they say, "Do you have any proof? Do you have any literature that backs up what you're saying to me, doc?" Isn't that why you go to the doctor? Because you think he is versed in scientific literature as opposed to religious literature?
But I'll tell you this, Steve. Even in the medical, especially I should say in the medical profession and in the legal profession, I tell people all the time, there's a reason it's called a practice, and you should ask questions. Those are humans, they're fallible, they don't know everything. And if you're going to take it on faith, you're taking a big risk, in my opinion.
Oh, and that's why some people die. My own. I had a cousin. Wow, I was 5 years. I may have been 4 or 5 years old. He was maybe a year older than I was, and he died of anaphylactic shock from penicillin.
Ooh,
And I was too young to really appreciate it, except that I had a good relationship with him, and then it was over.
sure.
The point is, what's the science of anaphylactic shock? What does penicillin do? It's not all mental. There are things, you could have a chemistry that goes haywire if you're given a drug. So you'll go through an allergic response, anaphylaxis, and you could die from it because now that drug stimulates the production of other cells in your body, which have no really business being there. And then you get to die. You stop breathing. That's one of the, anaphylaxis. You stop breathing, you itch. Those would be the signs of it, that you're having an anaphylactic reaction.
So those are good tips, but I found it interesting that and I never thought about it this way till I heard it said, but everyone dies of a lack of oxygen. When you eventually cease to live, it's always because your brain stops getting oxygen. There's various reasons that happens, but that's always what ends your life.
Fine with me. I'm on your side on that one.
But it's the truth. That's 100% true for everybody all the time, no matter what.
Well, there you go. and what book is that written in? The Joe Canfield book. Didn't you make up your own religion?
You and me can start one together, Steve. We'll have 4 disciples. 4 people will follow us.
So getting back to your question about should we all have opinions, I would say that if you really want to get into this kind of stuff, as far as living by truth as opposed to opinion, learn how to discern the differences between opinion and truth.
That's how I think about it. That's why I asked you. So, let's start with something low risk. We're both old enough to remember when, 1, there was no designated hitter, and 2, when the designated hitter was introduced to the American League. And there was, fierce debate on the efficacy or the intelligence of having a designated hitter. So, on an opinion there, I don't see any problem with that. But an opinion on war is dangerous, the way I think about it.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The thing about changing the rule of a baseball game is that, number one, it's only a game.
Yeah.
And it's only a rule.
Yeah.
All of which are subject to the winning, controlling, dominating, and righteous beliefs of the commissioner of baseball or the owners, however they want it.
Peter Uberoth at the time, if I remember right, but whoever. Yeah.
So, fine. But now you want to talk about the opinion of Hitler, right? Or, any other.
Or FDR or Churchill or any of them.
Any of them.
Yeah.
Just because we won didn't necessarily make it right, although I'm happy.
Yeah, I agree.
The thing is that if you can't discern, let me put it this way. The bottom line is, when I get really in your face now, you have no right to an opinion. Because to have a right to your opinion means, by the definition of words, assuming you want to live by the definition of words that you and I were both born into, we didn't make up these definitions of words.
Sure.
To say you have the right to an opinion means you have a right to your bias. And you very well might, but it also means you have a right to your prejudice, because an opinion is a prejudice.
Sure.
Now we're starting to get into murky water. Do you have a right to your prejudice? Ask any black person if a white person has a right to be prejudiced against a black person. And that'll be your answer.
Well, and you can
who don't.
Go ahead.
There are people who don't like you, Joe. There are people who don't like you, and they have a prejudice against you. That's their bias and opinion.
I find it hard to believe that somebody wouldn't like me, Steve. I'm such a likable guy.
agree. I agree. I never stay on the line this long with people. Absolutely.
I
So
hope you're
I'm
picking
coming.
up. I hope you're picking up my sarcasm there.
Yes, of course I'm trying to give it back to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing is, you don't have a right to an opinion if it's wrong, because to be wrong could mean 50 million people dying, like Hitler's opinion. And then the next word after that is, if you don't have the right to an opinion or a bias or a prejudice, you don't have a right to a faith. Did that just hit you below the belt?
No, I just like I'm for whatever.
How do you,
It's,
how do you
it's
think the Pope? How do you think the Pope feels about not having a right to his faith?
it's probably my chemistry or the pairings that I made uh before I was 5 or 6 or whatever the age is. Um but these types of conversations don't evoke an emotional response from me. I tend to approach most of these things very logically. And so I don't get real worked up over comments that other people make. I try to process them and understand them, which is why I enjoy our conversation so much, because I think you're coming at it from a very logical perspective. And I think that's why I receive it so well.
Well, I would say anybody who disagrees, prove it to me. Prove to me where I'm wrong, which would make every single one of my assertions false.
Mm.
And I find you're going to have a real hard time proving that my assertions are false when you can see my assertions play out in your life. In your actual life, my assertions play out, and you are going to make me wrong because you have a faith that I am wrong. As who is it? John, somebody said, well, excuse me.
I think that was Belushi, wasn't it?
So, yeah, I was saying, excuse me that you want to make all of my research wrong. So, in essence, what you're saying to be righteous is that my entire life has been spent in fallacy. No, your life has been lived in fallacy, not mine. I way too much time in the books, way too much time in the philosophical points of view, and you just don't have a right to certain opinions when it can cost hundreds of millions of lives. I'll tell you one other thing, just so you know, because just because things are not a certain way today doesn't mean they weren't a certain way yesteryear.
Sure.
What about the Crusades, Joe?
I was going to ask you about the Crusades. It's funny you bring that up.
How many people died for the Crusades that occurred in the Middle Ages? All of which was based on the Christian faith, the Christian bias, the Christian prejudice, the Christian opinion that if you're not saved by Jesus, you're a Muslim, you deserve to die.
Yep, 100%. Totally agree with you.
So how does that factor into anything? Well, that was then, this is now. Excuse me. You want to go a step further? Have you ever heard of the Children's Crusades?
I've not.
Uh-huh. Best you don't. Because in the Encyclopedia of Christianity, there is mention of the Children's Crusades, which, as far as I'm concerned, validates the existence of the Children's Crusades. Because otherwise, the Christian church wouldn't have validated it. It wouldn't be in their encyclopedia. So you know what it was? Approximately 50,000 children decided, and it's interesting because you want to put together their thoughts to the way I put together thoughts, where one thing has to kind of dovetail into another. They thought that if they went to the Holy Land, Jerusalem, with no food, no water, no weapons, no transportation, that God would open the Mediterranean Sea and allow them to walk to the Holy Land so that they could convince the Muslims to give it up. Well, give me a break. That that's fact, Joe. That's fact. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Christian Encyclopedia. So don't try and hit me with the righteousness of religion. Every religion has their very dark corner, which usually harbors those who are very fascistic and very anarchistic, because it's their way or the highway. And science does not kill people.
And does that
Opinions,
does that go
opinions
back?
do.
Does that go back to the pairings that people make? Is that how you explain that?
Sure. You saw all those children were brought up a certain way. Their parents taught them, which just blew me away when I did the research on it. Did the parents stop the children from going on their crusade? And what happened? What happened epigenetically to the parents? Do you know that? Do you think that they had thoughts? Their thoughts was, we lost our children, so maybe our faith is not correct. Do you think that thought put cortisol in their bloodstreams? Do you think they had a fight? Do you think they had a fight flight? How many stress related diseases occurred to the European parents of those children who went on the Children's Crusade? But you never hear about anything like that. But you know there had to have existed epigenetic illnesses, stress-related illnesses, as a result of them going. And then there were parents that were caused to stand trial for allowing certain things to happen and not happen. So then it became all political. But it was all based on what they taught the children and what they were taught themselves as children.
Mm.
Yeah, you got to choose what you wanted to be. Don't blame it on anybody. You did, and just know the venue that it was in was the venue of nonsense. Your child died in the venue of nonsense. And now you don't want to accept the consequences. So you're going to you're going to go into denial. You're going to go into rationalization, which are your ego defense mechanisms, to see if you can hold on to any semblance of order to your epigenetics. It all fits, Joe.
Yep.
Not one child came out alive of the 50,000 who participated in the Children's Crusades. Where was God? Did God need 50,000 children to die to prove the children's faith?
I know it's not funny, but it's so ridiculous you have to laugh at it. Yes.
Yeah, but you don't see any religioso laughing about it. They believe it was the way God chose to prove the children had faith in him. What creator of a universe this complex needs 50,000 children to die for it? The same children that it created in the first place. Sorry,
Yeah.
Joe. Sorry. That's why I'm in your face and up your nose.
Yeah, look, I totally get it. I'm 100% with you. I've said that a lot. There's two, in my I don't even know if opinions, just factually, when you look at mass casualties that have happened throughout human history, the two organizations that have been responsible for the most human deaths are religion and governments. But like, it's not even close.
Politics and religion.
Yep, it's not even close.
So I coined a word in my book. It's called socio-politico-religious. I put together those three things: social beliefs, political beliefs, religious beliefs. Socio-politico-religious. I tried not to let the stone go unturned.
Yep. Well, so Steve, we're almost up against our 2 hours here, and we got a lot more stuff to cover.
Really?
Can I talk you into?
I hated every bit of it.
I appreciate that. Can I talk you into coming back in August? Can you book another session in August? Is that okay with you?
Oh, I don't know, Joe. This has been so stressful to me.
Well, sleep on it, and if your cortisol levels get to the appropriate amount, if you would book another session, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll be happy.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
Through you, I'd like to sell my first book.
Totally. Yeah, look, I love the conversation. Like I said, I love the way you've laid it out, and I love all the thought you've put into it. And I find it fascinating. I think it's great for our audience to be exposed to it. And I think there's a lot to be learned here. And I just want to make sure that we continue down the path. So we've got a lot more ground to cover, I think.
I hope so. Well, how many people did you say will listen to your show?
We're pushing 2,000 followers on YouTube. When you look across everything, we're approaching 5,000, and we're getting like 25,000 views and downloads a week right now. So,
did they call in and ask you questions about this interview?
Not yet. Not yet.
No,
we haven't said, we've talked about doing that, but we haven't done it yet.
Okay, but eventually you think they will?
I'd like to, because I think there's a lot of value in that.
Would it be a good way of looking at it? I don't know. This is your field. Produce this interview, and on the August one, let them call in and ask questions based on this interview.
Yeah. So James is out there. James, this is going to air. Let me look at it.
Yo,
Say again, James.
August 15th.
August 15th. So if you want to book something after August 15th, we can give that a shot. We'll see how it goes. I've never done it, so I have no idea what will happen, but let's give it a try.
Sounds decent. How does James feel about what he heard between us today?
I can't speak for James. He's got to speak for himself.
Yeah, hi, Steve.
Hi. How did you feel about what you heard? He's not talking. I guess that's the answer.
Well, sometimes he's working in the background, so I don't know how much of I don't know if he listened to everything or not, but
sometimes I hurt feelings.
You're gonna have to work. You're gonna have to work harder to hurt mine. I'd have to have some feelings for you to hurt them, but
you don't have any feelings. I learned that when I first met you. No feelings in them. Joe, no feelings, can't feel. Or Joe, numbness, can't feel.
There you go. That's right.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much for the time tonight, Steve. Really appreciate it. But if you can book that second one after the 15th of August, that would be great.
I think I booked it already. Remember you said we'll keep it in.
Oh, you did? Hang on. I can tell you what it is. That's right. Just a sec. Let's just make sure while you're on here.
I didn't want to wait 6 weeks.
No, I was glad you grabbed this one, but you did another one in August already. Let me find it here. Where are you?
It's already there, Joe, on August 15th at 6 p.m.
Oh, I'm in July. That's my problem. Yeah, there it is, August 15th. So that's the same day this episode's gonna air. You want to try leaving it there? Or you want to try pushing it back a week?
Pushing it back means what? Towards.
Oh, shoot. We don't. Sorry, we're booked on the 22nd. What about the 29th? Yeah. Can you do the 29th?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to push it back to the 29th so people have a chance to see the episode. And then when we produce it, we can say Steve's coming back on. And if you want to, you can call on the 29th. Maybe we'll try a live stream, James. We've never done that.
Yeah, sure thing, Joe.
Tell them to bring their friends. Bring your friends. We could, you could bring on other guests and we can have a roundtable.
I was talking to someone about that yesterday, actually, about bringing on more than one person. Hannah, Steve, or James. I was talking to Hannah about that last night.
Yeah. Yes, Joe.
Who's Hannah? May I ask?
She's a guest we interviewed last night.
Oh,
interesting lady. She's in the UK.
is she on? She's on board with us, or she's different?
No, she's. I think she'd enjoy this conversation. She is a no nonsense kind of lady. I like her a lot.
We have to put somebody on who's anti us.
Who's
Otherwise, it looks like we're
contrarian?
stacking the deck. Yeah, we don't want to stack the deck.
Let us think about it. No, it's an interesting idea. Let us think about it. We'll see how it goes. Because we've had several people come on that are super faith based and super religious based. But I also don't want to ambush anyone or make them feel bad. So that's just not what we do.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, if you really wanted to do this from a non-ambush point of view, they could read the book and then have all the information they need to put me down.
No, that's what I'm very interested in. People that are prepared and understand what the conversation is going to be about and willing to participate in it. That I would do 100%. That there's a ton of value in that.
So you know who does that? You've heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Sure. Yeah.
He's expanded his show, not just from being your personal astrophysicist, but he has brought people on to discuss epigenetics and other areas of human endeavor. And he comes across as being very flummoxed as to why the human condition is the way it is. And I believe I address it fairly cogently.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have somebody who comes on, what you could do is, and I'm not going to tell you how to run your life or show, but if you have other people like that, you could really broaden your show base, if you will, with people who have other interests other than just salt, if you will.
Well, you know, I told you it's just because I cuss a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, there are other interests that people have. You know that that Neil deGrasse Tyson expanded his show to include other things than astrophysics.
Yeah, sure.
He's biological, political, you know, so he broadens the vistas.
Yeah, and
just a thought. I don't want to tell you what to do.
No, it's fine. It wouldn't be hard for us to do. What we really want people to do is what we're doing here. Think a little bit. Don't just take things on faith. Think a little bit and control your life. Like you have control over a lot of stuff and you're refusing to take it because of whatever. And like, I think that's why I'm so interested in bringing you on, is because I think you have a good explanation for why people are doing some of the things that they're doing. I want them to listen to this, you know?
Well, what I would suggest is that every single person who has a different point of view go into the realm of critical thinking and look it up. We are living in an information age, and to squander that age on your opinion, bias, prejudice, and faith, you want to talk about sin? That would be a sin. Not to use the information that people have died for over the millennia. Just so that you could have a very biased point of view that is not willing to see what else is out there. That would be a big mistake, and that would be my big advice to anyone who has a different point of view, including the ones who, let's say, are religious. The key point would be what caused them to be religious. It could be, believe it or not, Joe, it could be an epigenetic remnant. It's called transgenerational. Something could have happened to their grandparents and parents that caused a certain amount of stress, which affected the fetus. And now they became religious, or not. The Dutch famine of World War II was like that. Also, what happened to the occupants of concentration camps and their children downline. See? So these things, and then another interesting just concept is to say, what happens from void to void? It's another area people don't look at. Did they have a consciousness before they were even conceived? What was in that consciousness? What was in the void? And then after they die, there's no more consciousness. What's in that void?
Right.
The post-life void. So you're going to tell me that on this, according to Carl Sagan, on this little blue dot of an insignificant planet in an insignificant solar system, in an insignificant one of trillion galaxies in the universe, everything that happens between your two voids makes the universe or breaks the universe.
Right.
Are you kidding me? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no realism in this kind of thought. And as somebody who is religious has not thought of this. Or, you know what they have done? They've made up stories.
Yeah.
To explain what happens in the void. And to that, of course, you and I would ask, prove it. Prove to me that your concept of what happens in the voids on either side of life actually happens. Or is it just a remnant of some religious point of view that was brought forth from the caves of 40,000 years ago? And I would love to hear, some religious person's, point of view. Do you know, in closing, I had spoken to clerics, and I asked them, so tell me how, if the earth is only 4,000 or 6,000 years old, based on the begatting that all the humans did, from the time of Adam and Eve, it comes out mathematically to about a 6,000-year-old planet. How does a multi-million-year-old fossil show up on a 6,000-year-old planet?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm with you.
Do you know what he said? He said God put a 1,000,000-year-old fossil on a 6,000-year-old planet.
Okay.
And that's it. We walk away, and what do we do? Winston Churchill said that when the truth hits you and it knocks you down, if you're not inclined to understand what the truth is, you'll get up, dust off, and walk away as if nothing had happened. Winston Churchill. You think he knew anything about truth since he had to deal with Hitler?
Yeah.
So how do you put a multi-million-year-old fossil on a 6,000-year-old planet? Just because you have the power to do so as God. And that's satisfying somehow. That makes a lot of sense. And now, with that, you have no way of combating any politician who just wants to go to war with another political point of view just because they want to. Because you could say, God wanted it.
Right.
And could you be wrong? No, because God wanted it. I can't live that way.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too, is I need proof. I'm just not an on faith guy.
Okay, my friend. And I do count you as a friend.
Yeah, I love it. I love the conversations. I love what you're talking about. I love the concepts, and I'm really looking forward to our next conversation. Okay, guys, there you go. Pretty heavy and deep conversation. Love the approach that Steve takes. Fact-based, logic-based, looking for proof. Truth is something that is true all the time for everybody on the earth, no matter what. And super interesting conversation. And we're going to have Steve back on another session because we didn't cover everything in his book or all the thoughts that he's pondered for his 70 plus years here on earth. And really looking forward to having him back on. So really appreciate him taking the time. He does not, he's not the kind of guy that is going to waste a lot of time on something he doesn't think is useful. So really appreciate him taking the time with us and our audience to kind of walk everybody through his concepts in his book. And we're really looking forward to having him back on. So James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all our social media accounts there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to there. And please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. It's super helpful for us. We're going to keep bringing you awesome guests like Steve and all the other guests we've had on. Tons of valuable information, tons of different ways to think, tons of education to be had there to help you build the life that you want. You don't want to miss any of these. They're great for you to incorporate into your daily life. So make sure you catch the next episode. We'll see you there.